Eric Smith, author of and narrator for The Acquired Taste for Adventure, a D&D audiobook series based upon actual Dungeons & Dragons games. And with that, let's get started. Alton's Story, The Acquired Taste for Adventure, Chapter 4, Continued. Iarno Albrek trotted his horse down the wooded road, opting to take the northern fork into the coastal village of Three Towers. The northeastern watchtower, one of the three for which the town was named, loomed larger and larger as he approached. The wizard spotted a man standing atop the lookout perch, who, having also spotted him, called down to some other guards inside the building. 3 armed men, all dressed in red uniforms, came out to meet Iarno before he could reach the main gate, and they fanned out to block the path upon which he traveled. An unshaven middle-aged man, wearing a leather skull cap and a stained tunic, stood in the middle of the road, holding up his hand as Iarno approached. The balding guardsman leaned his body weight on an axe that looked like it was probably an antique, but still had years of use ahead of it. The other 2 younger men stood on both sides of the road, with their spears at the ready. Just to be clear, they meant business. The older guardsman, who was somewhat bored-looking, finally spoke. "All right, that's far enough. Who are you, and what's your business in Three Towers?" "My name is Glassstaff, and my business I keep to myself." The guardsman frowned at the stranger. "Well, Glassstaff, the Redbrand has jurisdiction over Three Towers, including the trade goods that come in and out. And by the look of that fine case you're carrying, I'd guess that you're a jeweler, which means you owe us a gate toll, and the price of a merchant's admission to the bazaar. Now, if you claim that you're not a merchant, then I'd guess you're trying to smuggle in items without paying your dues, in which case you also owe us a fine on top of everything else. But either way, we have to search you, Glassstaff." He signaled the men, and one of them let go of his spear with one hand to grab at the reins of Iarno's horse, while the other man kept his spear pointed at the wizard. Iarno realized that the guardsman had spotted his polished wood case, full of his wizardly supplies, which was tied with thin rope atop all of the other goods that he carried. He also realized that the guardsman's act was just an elaborate hustle to go through his things and take whatever they wanted. The case, while devoid of any trade goods, certainly did have some valuable trinkets and spell components that the guardsman could steal. Iarno could replace them with time, but he already had them. They were in good order, and most importantly, they were his. While he planned on directly confronting the guardsman sooner or later, he hadn't planned on it being this soon. "Oh well," he thought, "they'll have to learn to respect me sooner or later." The wizard from Waterdeep made a fast gesticulation while saying a power word, and held his 2 hands out in front of him. His thumbs were touching with palms spread, facing downward to the ground, as a thin plane of hellfire blasted outward from the fingertips of his burning hands, the burst fanning outward to engulf the 2 men in front of him in a tormenting blaze. They dropped their weapons, screeching as they fell to their knees and desperately slapped at the flames. The old guard suddenly realized that this man was no common merchant. He quickly brandished his axe for combat, a motion made easy by obvious practice, and ordered Iarno off his mount. "All right, you get off that horse now, and surrender to me, or you die." The man's power of intimidation was almost impressive. But Iarno decided not to kill this one, as it might have been possible to use the guard to his advantage. The wizard uttered the quickest of incantations, casting another spell that clouded the guardsman's mind with an implanted suggestion. "Yes, I will get off the horse and surrender to you, and you will take me to your guard captain so that he can figure out what to do with me." Iarno could see the faint darkness in the guardsman's eyes, the distant, far-off look that meant his spell had worked. The guardsman stood ready to act upon the thought as if it were his own. The wizard dropped down to the ground and started forward, leading his horse toward the man and the gate that stood behind him. "I'm taking you to see Durbin," the guard promised. "He'll figure out what to do with you." "Yes, I'm sure we can work something out," Iarno smiled. The old guardsman took the wizard from Waterdeep to the southeastern edge of town, nearby to where the stone cliffs overlooked the busy docks some 40 feet below them. There they approached a fancy-looking bar that overlooked the cove, a posh place called the Starlight Tavern, the well-kept appearance of which stood in stark contrast to the ruined remains of a once stately manor house that lay 100 yards east of the building. The fancy tavern was obviously the town guard's chosen gathering place, as evidenced by the red uniforms of patrons sitting and standing inside and out. The two started up the stone steps, the old guardsman escorting Iarno with his open palm pushing at the wizard's back, both of them being watched by the other puzzled guards whose hands went to their weapons, just to make sure they were close, if needed. They marched to a booth in a quiet corner of the bar, where a pudgy man in a sweaty tunic sat with a tankard of ale, checking over some papers that were spread on the table before him. He glanced up as the two were approaching and sat back in his chair with his hands on his hips. "Finny? What the devil is going on?" "Caught this guy at the northeast gate. Some kind of wizard or something, I guess. Killed 2 of our men, just like that. Burned him alive. Figured I'd bring him here and see what you wanted to do with him." The captain's round face lost all its color. "Say what? Why didn't you just kill him? Gods!" The captain realized his man had been tricked, some bizarre influence clouding his mind. He grabbed at his belt and scabbard that lay upon the table, desperately trying to pull his knife from the sheath so that he could mount some kind of defense for himself. But Iarno had already cast a spell, loosing a bolt of pure fire that zipped from his fingertips and sank a sizzling barb into the guard captain's chest. Durbin screamed and threw himself away from the table onto the wooden planks of the walkway, seriously wounded from the sudden attack. Iarno spun around to face down the old guardsman that had brought him here, along with 2 more that had rushed up from a couple of booths away. The elder guardsman suddenly wondered why it had seemed so sensible to bring the wizard here until just moments ago. But he didn't have much time to consider the point now. He hefted his axe to attack and viciously struck at the wizard, but his swing was deflected at the last possible moment. Somehow, the wizard had blocked the impact with a mere motion of his hand, shielding the blow away with an arcane energy that defied explanation. The skilled wizard quickly ran through the gesticulations of another spell, which blinded all 3 of them with a dazzling spray of multicolored light. They all had no choice but to fall back a few paces and weakly defend themselves, hopeful that the wizard would not take further advantage of their compromised state. Meanwhile, Durbin, barely alive and in great pain, had drawn his dagger out of its sheath. He reached up from the floor to stab Iarno, plunging the weapon into the wizard's side. Iarno, who had never known such injury before, wasn't quite sure which was more painful, the jagged blade or the revelation that he too was an actual mortal being. The sweaty guard captain hung his body weight on the blade and started to tear the wound downward, while his other arm clenched around Iarno's waist to prevent the man from pushing him away. "You can't kill me. The spider protects me," Durbin hissed. "Not anymore," the wizard said coldly. He extended his open palm and placed his fingertips onto Durbin's face while he uttered another power word. Iarno's vampiric touch pulled the last of the man's vitality into the wizard standing above him, and instantly Durbin was dead. His skin was a lifeless blue, and his eyes were left as hideous gray orbs that were devoid of any animation. The man's fingers, wrists, and finally all of his limbs curled in on themselves like a dying insect, leaving him looking like a desiccated husk. The energy that Iarno had absorbed began to heal him before the eyes of the guardsmen, his flesh, organs, and skin mending themselves, and the blood ceasing to flow from the now closed wound. More guards had poured into the bar, taking up position behind the blinded guardsman. But after the horror of the scene they had just watched, and the sight of the now unharmed wizard who stood rejuvenated before them, no one seemed ready to charge the man and be the next one to fall prey to his magic. "Not so eager to die now, are you?" Iarno smiled. "That's good. Well then, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Glassstaff, and you all work for me now." Pardon the interruption, but if you're enjoying my work, please like, subscribe, and leave me a comment down below. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to receive notifications whenever I upload a new video. Though the 5 adventurers had slain the goblins inside Cragmaw Cave and successfully rescued Keldorn, the group's gnome employer, Dornan, still remained unaccounted for. The search for him would continue, but for now they needed to recuperate after the rigors of combat. The adventurers barricaded the entrance to the room with a few crates, while Erevan, now finished with Keldorn's care, began to dress Malik's wounds. As the elf noble worked and they rested, Jazzberry, displaying a bit of musical inspiration, played them an old sailor's sea shanty. And the Devil Bard made sure that there was something more than just soothing emotions behind the words. There was magic in them. Waves of ocean call to slumber, lulling, lapping on the hull. Drifting motion pulls you under, sung to sleep by call of gull. Rest thy head, my gentle, rest, my bonny boy, for the day was long and weary, and to rest's our only joy. Churning water crashes over, pushing, pounding on the deck. Sea so calm inside the harbor, promises our ship to wreck. Rest thy head, my gentle, rest, my bonny son. The swabbing was exhausting, but your work is finally done. Mainsails were all left in tatters, torrents tearing on the cloth. Sailors battered, ships and splinters, evidence of Kraken's wrath. Rest thy head, my gentle, rest, my bonny boy, for our lives were long and weary, and to rest's our only joy. While Jazzberry sang, Alton examined some of the leftover crates, hopeful that his avarice would be sated this time. The boxes were all identical in size and weight, and all marked in the same way with black paint, a stenciled image of a roaring dragon's head in profile. The halfling rogue leaned hard on his crowbar and broke open a container, revealing a smartly packed supply box of bedrolls, tents, weatherproof blankets, mess kits, and the like. This one box alone was ample for outfitting a squad of 10 troops in the field, and if all the boxes contained the same items, they stocked enough to field a small company of soldiers. Alton removed a blanket and shook it out to unfurl it, walking it over to cover Keldorn's nearly naked body. And after sorting through a few more crates, the adventurers discovered the location of a chest, hidden behind the stacks of wooden boxes. Inside they found 3 gold teeth, whose origins they did not wish to know, along with another ruby-colored potion of healing, and 2 pieces of rolled parchment paper. After some discussion, the group decided that Malik should be the one to carry the healing potion, as the barbarian dwarf was the one who had, so far, seen the most hand-to-hand combat, and he had suffered the wounds to prove it. If he could heal himself without relying on the other members of the party, it might be the difference between his own life and death. Erevan, the elf magic user and swordsman, looked at the scrolls and could tell that they were both spells imbued to paper, though he didn't recognize the entire collection of arcane symbols. So, the young noble from the high forest retreated to a quiet corner to perform a ritual spell to identify them. He placed the 2 scrolls within the confines of the concentric chalk rings he had drawn on the floor, then closed his eyes, falling into a trance-like state of meditation. Alton, the halfling rogue, found himself peeking over the magic user's shoulder, as he was keenly interested in the elf's strange practice. Keldorn, the man whose life they'd saved, was now wrapped in a blanket and propped up against one of the crates that lay near the fire. Finally feeling a bit comfortable, he began to tell the story of what had happened to him and Dornan at the hands of the goblins.
We left Neverwinter before you, but we was heading east at the Tribor Trail, rather than going directly to Three Towers. Dornan had it in his head for us to go looking for a lost mine he's been on about for years. The Wave Echo Cave, he called it.
Erevan's ears perked up at the mention of the odd-sounding name, sure that he'd heard of it during his many years of schooling. Keldorn continued.
It's a strange name, to be sure, but Dornan swears it's full of magic, and that he's come upon a map that showed him where it was. He asked me to go with him to have a look, and he hired 2 men to help guard the wagon. But along the way, we all got nicked by some garbos and a bugbear. For 2 other men, Hank and Reginald, they were both killed. But the monsters took us alive, me and Dornan, and they dragged us back here. Somehow they seemed to know what Dornan was up to. The bugbear, Bulk he's called, he took Dornan away to question him about the mine, and I haven't seen him since. That was about a day ago, I think, but I couldn't tell you for sure, with no sun down here in this stinking hole. They was asking me all kinds of questions I didn't know nothing about. Where the cave was, how to get in and so forth, and they was battering me pretty fierce. His voice broke off, not wanting to recall any more. I would have told him, but I don't know a damn thing about it. I don't care about the stupid mine. I mean, to hell with it. Keldorn swallowed hard. I think Dornan's still down here, and I wish I could go with you to look for him, but I don't have me weapons or armor, and even if I did, well, you see the state I'm in.
The party agreed. He was not ready to accompany them. Some questions did linger in their minds, though. Why had Dornan kept the mine a secret from them? He could have at least told them he was going on an expedition. He had told none of the group other than Keldorn, and if that were the case, how did the monsters seemingly know of the cave? Moreover, goblinoid beings typically didn't kidnap specific victims, and while the revelation of the bugbear was disconcerting, they also typically lacked the kind of wit and long-range planning necessary to kidnap and question victims for future gains. Could they have been working for someone else? And that is where we are going to leave it for today. But rest assured, we will pick up from where our story left off in next week's episode. Thank you so much for staying until the end of the video, and if you enjoyed what you heard, please consider donating to my Patreon, which you can find linked in the description. I appreciate all of you, and until next time, please be kind to yourselves and to each other.